Let's move on to the climate talks. There's been so much news, both domestically and internationally, that COP28 is going on and perhaps not getting as much attention until it finishes. It's still going on in Dubai. So what's the Guardian's take this morning?
This is really interesting because on the one hand, you mentioned the relatively low levels of coverage, and yet at the same time, of course, all the other headlines for the last 2 or 3 years have been about the climate and the climate emergency. There's so much activism around it. COP28 is happening in Dubai, and it's in the global stock-taking phase of the talks, the final phase of the talks, where all the activists, all the fringe and non-fringe panellists are getting together and saying, where are we at? The problem is that even beyond the activists and the grassroots campaigners' circles, we seem to be on course to end up at 3 degrees above pre-industrial levels. If that happens, many areas of the
3 degrees?
Yeah, and we're trying to
1.5 is obviously the goal.
The goal is 1.5. 2 is really very not wanted at all. Anything above that, huge parts of the planet will be uninhabitable. And of course, people who are warning us, their job is to alert us to what's going to happen in the future. So, of course, I'm not saying that come 2030 it's going to be uninhabitable, but they are saying we need to stop thinking about tipping points and start thinking as if we're at the tipping point. So the time for warnings is over, the time for action is now. There's always been a little bit of cynicism around the COP summits, but I do think that even if 80% of it is just for show, if 80% of it, nothing happens, that leaves the other 20%, which is world leaders in a room together, listening to the science, debating and forming a consensus. We have made progress. We do agree that there are changes to the climate. Now, a few years ago, there were lots of people saying that that's not true at all. So actually, the needle has shifted on this issue. And
it's so complicated, isn't it? Because all economies are set up differently, and the poorer countries need help in transitioning, and who pays for that? So much to be discussed. It's not totally simple at all, is it? No. So we'll no doubt get lots of coverage towards the end of the conference when we find out what's actually been decided.